Jefferson. Wow! What a catch! Touchdown, Jets! That kid's amazing. His team is given time. He wants Jefferson. Climbs the ladder. Oh my goodness! Loading. He's going to heave one for the front right. Palmer drops it in.
Hello, cadets. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Academy. You've got John, and we're joined by a very special guest, my man Marvin. How you doing today, Marvin? Tell us a little bit about your work and where the people can find you.
Yeah, thank you guys. First of all, for having me. This is awesome, and excited to talk a little bit about some of these rookies with you guys. People can usually find me on X or Twitter at @FF_MarvinE. Most of my work makes its way on there, and during the season I write for the Fantasy Footballers and mainly do Dynasty and some DFS mixed in there as well. But as you guys know, Dynasty is my passion. That's what I love. And so, there's no better time to do a mock draft than right before the Combine. So excited to be here, excited to spend some time with you guys to talk about these rookies.
Yeah, man, thanks for joining us. And I'm super excited to have Marvin today. This is one of my favorite followers. Again, that's FF_Marvin E on X. This guy, there's some really good stuff that he's posting on X. But to that point, he's also making some really good articles for fantasy footballers. He breaks down during the season stuff like expected points per game versus their actuals, what it means and why. There's a ton of great in-season content there. But the reason I asked Marvin to join us today and why I'm so excited to have him is some of the stuff he puts out on X on his prospect model and his dynasty kind of mindset going into the draft. So we figured, the Combine's probably going to change a lot here in a week or so, but it'd be really good to run like a mock draft before the Combine to kind of see how high we are on these guys and not really forget some of the things that we took away from watching their film and their production in college. So again, that kind of is what we're super excited to have Marvin. That's what I was got into when I saw your content, man, was the prospect models and your grading for them. And I looked back and you hit on a good bit of guys. You were really beating the drum for Tank Dell as right after the Jordan Addisons and the JSNs of the world, we should be talking about this Tank Dell guy, and we shouldn't be bumping him down 3 tiers either. So I love his prospect models on there. I'm sure you've got more coming. I've seen you start to drip some out. You just released your 2024 running backs one. So before we get into the draft, we're definitely about to start this draft. Don't worry, anybody. I did want to ask Marvin one question around his head space around rookie models. It seems like you've been doing this for a few years now. And again, I just called out some of the people you've hit on. One of the guys that I looked back and I was like, man, he slipped through the cracks on this model was Puka Nacua, right? I've been doing a lot of going back and checking the receipts, who had this guy at the top of their model, right? And so is there any sort of revisionist history you do going forward with your model to maybe look at some of the big guys who maybe slipped through the cracks, or vice versa, people who you really were extremely right on and kind of strengthen or change that model a little bit from year to year? I just want to hear your thought process around that.
Yeah, that's an awesome question, and something that, when people ask me how do you get started with a model? What do you do to start evaluating these prospects? And my general advice is to always go back and evaluate your process. Every year you should look back and see what hit and what didn't, because it tells you a lot, right? It tells you what's working and what needs to be tweaked a little bit. And Puka is a perfect example, because for me, he was someone who I can probably pull this up super quickly, but he wasn't someone that was ranked super highly for me because of the draft capital. But one thing when you look at Puka and when you look at some of the other day 3 wide receivers that have hit, something they usually all have in common is that they dominated at the collegiate level from a production standpoint at either early in their careers, or they developed into that potential wide receiver one for their respective teams. And Puka definitely falls into that bucket as a guy that was super productive, checked all the boxes you looked for, and was someone I actually flagged as a somewhat of a sleeper day 3 guy that you should probably pick up because of the production. When you look at my model and I have some of that color coded, his production always popped up. And that's someone that if you see that guy, that usually means that they have a higher hit rate. And historically, we've seen that. Day 3 guys and day 3 wide receivers specifically, they hit around a 5 to 10% rate. So very low, right? So when you're taking that chance, chances are it's not going to hit. But when we look at hit rates for guys that were productive, even with day 3 capital, it jumps up to around that 15 to 20% range. So still not great, right? But it's still higher than 10%. And that's, as fantasy managers, that's all we can do, right? Is to give ourselves the best opportunity and the best chance to hit on some of these prospects, because you're making so many picks every year. Make the bet on the guy that has a higher chance to hit. So Puka hit that mark. Stephon Diggs in the past has hit that mark. So guys like those wide receivers that were super productive, there's still a chance that they're not going to hit, but they have a higher chance to hit than someone who barely produced at the collegiate level.
Yeah, I love that. That's I just thank you for kind of giving us a peek into that mind of yours, man. It's really cool to see you put those models together, and I bet you're doing something to kind of track that you're getting better every year too, right? Because I guarantee as you're refining your process, you're noticing that you're getting more accurate. So really cool stuff, man. What popped out to me was like his yards per route run, right? He had a crazy yards per route run in college. And now it's like, well, now I'm looking at it maybe a little too closely a year out after. I'm like, well, now I just want to know what they run on per route basis. Like, just tell me that. But okay, well, thank you for that, man. And we're going to pick your brain some more throughout this draft, to learn a little bit more about how you're thinking about this stuff. Because I think this is just the type of stuff that is like dynasty guru level that Marvin brings to the table, man. So we will get the draft started. We agreed to move kind of quickly through the first 7 picks because it's probably just a matter of where they go, not what the order is. Sure, there will be drafts where someone picks not one of these first 7 picks, but I think it's pretty consensus that there's a top 7 guys in this class that are going to be talked about ad nauseum. So we will really want to get into the guys after that. So without further ado, I will let's let Marvin make the first pick. Let's let him be as our guest. Have the 101. Marvin, you're on the clock, brother.
I love it, and this is maybe the easiest pick on the board right now. So it's got to be Caleb Williams. I won't go into all the details, but the guy has this body of work that truly speaks for itself. 90th percentile on several efficiency metrics that you throw out there. And so when there's a guy that's that productive and he gets high first round draft capital as a quarterback, there's nothing else to talk about. So gladly we'll take him at the 101.
Love it, dude. If you notice real quickly,
no picture
I have
yet.
the first pick, the second, third, fourth, fifth, 7th, 9th, and 10th. That's because this team was called the Collapse for Caleb. I really wanted this guy. I believe in him. I also really liked this class. So in this league, I just set my team on fire and left with 8 firsts. So I love it. John, why don't you go second, brother?
Yeah, man, I'm not going to really overthink this one. The second pick, we're going to take Marvin Harrison. And now I know he hasn't played a snap in the NFL, but it feels like he's already a Hall of Famer the way we're talking about him. He's one of the most polished wide receivers we've got out of this, and in quite a bit. So, I mean, he's huge. He's got his dad's athleticism. So, Marvin Harrison, lock him in at the 102.
I love it. Again, this is going to vary who these what order they go in, but I think it's pretty locked in. I'm going to do Malik Neighbors just for the sake of it. I am like as high on him, if not higher. If his last name was, I don't know. Heinz Ward Jr. or something. If he had an NFL bloodline and the same tape this guy does, then I would probably be higher on him than Marvin Harrison Jr. I absolutely love Malik Neighbors, and I think talent-wise, he's probably just a little bit above these guys. But we'll keep moving. Let's not snake it, and let's have Marvin back on the clock, brother.
Man, I think this is where it gets a little interesting for in Superflex drafts, because you could theoretically go two options here. So I think it's either Drake May or Jaden Daniels. I lean right now Drake May, and would not hate it if anyone took Jaden Daniels right there, just because look at the production, you look at the efficiency, the sneaky athleticism in there too. Right now, when you look at some of his numbers, 87th percentile adjusted yards per attempt. When you adjust for conference, it's up there as well. I believe he leads this class in big time throw rate, according to PFF, and just a really productive prospect again. And that's what I love about this class so much, is that you really can't go wrong with any of these first 5 picks. You could even stretch that to the first 6 or 7 picks. And so Drake May's the pick for me, but whoever gets taken at 105, I wouldn't hate it if they went 4th as well.
Dude, there's been a lot of Drake May slander the past week or so, and I don't know if I'm here for it. I'll just put it like that. I don't know if I'm here for it.
Prospect fatigue. It happens every year.
Yeah.
John, you're up next, brother.
Yeah, so I actually love Jaden Daniels, and to have him at the 105 feels like a blessing. I do have Daniels slightly ahead of May just because of the rushing upside he has, and I do think when it comes to draft capital, Jaden Daniels is probably going to be a top 6 pick. So you factor in the Heisman, the top 6 pick, wherever team he goes to, he's going to have a few years to build. So I have Daniels slightly ahead, but I'm not going to, again, May, Daniels, they kind of go just in any about order, but I think he has the rushing upside. He can be anything from a Jalen Hurts to a Justin Fields. And just with that floor, with his rushing ability, it really makes you want to take him. He feels safe in the sense of fantasy output right out the gate because of the rushing ability, but it's going to be seen if he can be a polished NFL passing quarterback. So it remains to be seen.
Yeah, dude, this one's tough. It's such a tough who's the QB2 in the draft. One gives off, Justin Herbert vibes, and the other gives off Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is really prolific, but so is Justin Herbert, right? So they're two different types of players, but both offer a similar upside. Man, Brock Bowers, though, fall into someone at the 106, it's crazy. And this is the greatest tight end prospect ever. I play in a league where I have the 4th overall pick in a super flex, but it's a 2-point tight end premium. Yeah, I think every catch is 3 points for the tight end.
If you're in a tight end premium league like that,
104 if I can get him in that league.
Right. You can justify it.
The regular league sounds fine. And then I think we're back to Marvin.
Hey, man, you guys are giving me all the tough picks here early on, because I feel like this is kind of the point where another, not a tier break, but where there's a little more discourse, because you could go quarterback here, you could go wide receiver. Personally, though, I think I will take Rome Odunze here. I like him quite a bit as a prospect. I've already mentioned quarterback that you could take here, so there's a quarterback I like here as well. But obviously with Rome Odunze, what comes with him is the just the prolific route running, the ability to just dominate in all areas of the field, and we saw that production continuously improve. And the senior year production was truly elite. Now, where there's a separation between him and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Neighbors is that Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. had a higher peak, and they did it at a younger age. And so we see that continuously, that age and experience adjusted production is a pretty good indicator for success in the league and breakout rates. And so that's why he's my wide 3, but by all means, he's also a great prospect in my model. He's 90th percentile. I mean, there's not a lot of holes to poke there in his profile. And if he gets drafted with, top 10, top 15 draft capital, I'll gladly take him here.
John, you heard that? Age adjusted production. I love it, Marvin. Thank you for that's such good analysis, man. And I'll be honest though, I might be the only guy higher on Roma Dunze than his own dad. Like, I don't know if you've seen the tweets. This guy's like got all these burners where he's like, "Hey, my son's the best wide receiver in the league," like or whatever. And I'm like, I totally am right there with you, dude. No, I mean, I still have him as my wide receiver 3, but holy cow. I mean, this guy passes the eye test. I love the guy. I personally think this, just my opinion, this is where the big tier break is. Like, I like the guys after him, but again, in any given year, he'd be the wide receiver 1 in a given class. But it is, I agree with you, it's a really good point. This beautiful year where it all came together is his senior year, right? So you would have loved to have seen him with his big frame doing stuff like that as a sophomore or a junior. So had a great junior year, but just not to that like Bolitnikoff level. But okay, John, you're back on the clock, brother.
Yeah, man. So we took Jaden Daniels at the 105. I'm going to take his teammate here and double up on the LSU with Brian Thomas right here. He's 6'4". He's got the speed. He caught 17 touchdowns last year, which it seems like almost all of his catches felt like touchdowns. He's projected to be a late round first, maybe early round second. So really depends on the draft capital. I can see this guy going to the back of the first at the 110. Maybe projecting a super flex early second round. It really just depends on his draft capital. But the player himself, he's 6'4". He has the speed. He's a vertical threat. I like Thomas here.
Yeah, I love him too. I would say he's probably slightly edges out Troy Franklin for me, just off of eye test. Like, I know, I do. God, I don't want to make Marvin give away all his secrets, but I'd be curious to hear where he chimes in on this pick. Just give us a quick skinny on where your head's at with that pick.
So I'll say this: Brian Thomas should be a first-round pick in Superflex leagues. I think he belongs in that range. I have a couple of other wide receivers just ahead of him because of just production. Yeah, and I mean, you probably hear the themes of when I'm talking about like Neighbors, Harrison, and Odunze. There's just a couple things that of some other wide receivers I like a little more. But that's the best part about this class is you could argue and make a really good case about 3 or 4 wide receivers here for within that wide receiver 3 to wide receiver 6-7 range, and they're all valid. And when I say Brian Thomas is ranked a little lower for me, he's still, I believe, in the 82nd, 83rd percentile, which in most classes is still really, really good. Would be the wide receiver 3 in some classes. So by all means, he's a great wide receiver, and it's just about preference at this point. Who do you want to grab? Who's the player that you gravitate towards? And that's the best part is, we do these mock drafts and share our opinions, but at the same time, it's always good for even listeners and for Dynasty players to, watch the film, read and take in all these sources because they all hold value and will provide a holistic opinion versus just mine, right? Not just mine. Mine's not the perfect opinion. So definitely listening to you guys and to everyone else is the way to go.
Yeah, I love it though, dude. Good points. And I'm just thinking about your brain, like looking at Xavier Worthy's true freshman production and just like exploding. Okay, I will keep moving. I'm going to assume this guy gets the draft capital. And if that is the case, then this is the pick for me. It would be JJ McCartney. Now, I am historically like, I'm lower on this guy than consensus. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can build the case. Like, he won the championship, didn't turn the ball over, all that good stuff. But like, just wasn't very prolific as a passer to me. Again, I would think for a guy like Marvin who loves him some production, that this guy maybe leaves a little bit higher just in terms of like sheer volume stats. But he's a high end recruit, declared early, won a college championship, and if he's a top 15 NFL pick and he goes to someone like the Rams, which is like, where a couple mocks have put him, and that's a really interesting pick. So, but again, I'll be honest, I might be shopping this pick in the draft. If I'm actually me right here and I've got Drake, I've got all these guys because I've got 8 first-round picks. I'm probably set with Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels, and I might be looking to trade out of this pick, me personally. But I will keep moving and pass it back to Marvin.
All right, so you may have already mentioned him on here, but my pick would actually be Xavier Worthy.
Let's go!
And I think he's a very polarizing guy, and I think part of it is because just the production has declined. But when you look at in totality, right, his true freshman season is the one that stands out because it's 99th percentile. That's how good he was as a true freshman, right? As an 18-year-old freshman. There are wide receivers out there that enter the draft that don't even hit the efficiency and total production that he hits on relative to his team, right? It was super impressive. But the reason why he's not further up is because we saw that decline, and we just didn't see him hit that peak again, right? And part of it is because he dealt with, I believe, a broken hand in his sophomore year. That's at least what he claimed, right? And so that affected his production. But still, coming out of this class, he's one of the leaders in experience-adjusted production. I think he's a really good route runner, deceptive route runner. He's got all the qualities to be a solid I guess top 24 wide receiver is the range I want to give him. I don't know if I'm calling him a top tier wide receiver 1 like some of these other guys that have that ceiling, but at the very least, at the end of the first round, I think he's a really solid pick with a lot of the boxes that we look for checked for in my opinion.
I love it, dude. I'm high on him if you can't tell. Like, I just love how fast he is, passes the eye test. Yeah, I'm really curious to see where he falls in your model when it's all said and done. Like, I would assume you have him just under a 90th percentile prospect. But again, I don't want to give away the farm here.
He actually nailed it because he's right there too. He to me is the wide receiver 4 right behind Odunze,
Yeah.
which might be a hot take. And I posted something about Xavier Worthy and Rome Odunze and got the heat from his dad as well. So you don't, Odunze
really?
I did. So at the very least, here's what I'm gonna say. Odunze is still my wide receiver 3, but my point really is that Xavier Worthy is a lot closer in that tier with guys like Brian Thomas, like Troy Franklin. He's within that same tier in my opinion, and so to be able to get him sometimes in the second round in some of these drafts is just awesome value.
Yeah. No, I love it. Okay. Well, let us keep rolling here. So that puts John back on the clock.
Yeah, so we're going to be starting the second round, and I got to say, this draft class, this wide receiver draft class, I feel like everyone is 6'3", 200 pounds in this draft class. It seems so deep. So I'm going to go with someone maybe a little outside the box here. I like Coleman here. I think there's a lot of room to grow. He's Florida State. He's super young. I think if he goes in the right system, like, this kid can really grow into something special. I don't think he's even 21 yet. I believe he's 20 years old. So, I mean, he's physical. He's an ex receiver. And like I said, he's got room to grow. He's probably going to be a first round pick. Maybe, again, second, he might be a day 2 pick in the NFL draft. So if he goes to the right system, this kid can definitely grow.
Yeah, dude, my prediction, he's gonna be like this year's Anthony Richardson of the combine. Like, this guy will run in like the low 4.4s and put up 20 bench press or something like that, and people will he'll have like an RAS score of like 9.8 or something like that, and he might start creeping back into that round 1 discussion. I personally, like, the production scares me. The lack thereof a little bit, and a lot of his production coming off of touchdowns. But I will say, like, the dude, watching him return punts was kind of cool, like just how big and
Right.
and agile he was. So yeah, I agree. Very intriguing prospect. Someone I'm a little lower on than others, but I certainly understand the pick. Okay, I'm back on the clock here. This starts to get like tricky for me because I think these guys all start like it just starts to get tougher. I'm this is where I maybe go. I feel wrong taking anyone other than Troy Franklin, knowing his production. So I'm gonna do it. And if I was like managing this team, this is probably who I'd end up taking, assuming Bo Nix doesn't get first round draft capital. But Troy Franklin's production was pretty damn solid. Early declare, does have speed. His frame scares the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Like the way he's built, he looks like Bambi. Like, and that's one of my challenges is like if you don't pass my eye test, and I'm like can't see you translating to the next level, I have a hard time overlooking the production. But the production was pretty crazy. So we'll just believe in it at that point, assuming that Bo Nix doesn't get first round draft capital. AD Mitchell's advanced analytics are really scary, but he does pass the eye test to me. And then I won't go much further. But yeah, that's my pick. Marvin, you're back on the clock, brother.
Yeah, I love both of those picks, by the way. That's right around where I have both of those guys. Right now, I think it's time to take a running back. And this is a little scary because this just goes,
I'm interested to see who you're going to take first here.
Yeah, no one wants to take a running back, right? But I'm going to take Braylon Allen. That's my guy. That's my guy, and I can I can make the argument for any of those other top guys, right? There's intriguing things about each one of them, but for me, I always lean production, and if all else fails, that's what I lean on. And when you look at what he did as a 17-year-old freshman, moving up and producing at a consistent level, the frame is ridiculous, 250 under 250 pounds, and the fact that he leads this class in conference and experience adjusted production, his scrimmage yards per team play is not elite, and so when I say he's my RB1, one thing that I want to make sure it's clear is that not every RB1 in every class is created equal, and so an RB1 in this class is not the same as an RB1 over the last 2 years, and so Braylon Allen is still in that mid to lower 80th percentile for me, but at the same time he checks a lot of the boxes I look for. We'll see how he does at the combine. If he does terribly, he's going to move down most likely in my model, but he's not a perfect prospect, but to me he checks enough of the boxes where I'm willing to take him in this early second round range in 10 to 12 team leagues.
Did you just get sniped, John?
No. I was thinking about obviously taking a running back here in this range, but I didn't expect Allen to be the first one off the board. I expected somebody like maybe Jonathan Brooks, but again, I don't have a problem with it because I feel like there's 5 guys at the running back position kind of just jumbled up, and there's not really a standout right now. Maybe we'll have one when the combine comes around, but I can understand the mindset here.
Yeah, I want to see him run fast. That's all I'm going to say about that is like if he somehow like even runs like a 4.5, I'll start to get pretty excited about it. But love the production, love how young he is. That's my biggest knock on him is just like I'd love to see a bit more like explosiveness on tape, like blowing me away. He never blew me away. He actually blew me away when he was younger, and I think that's the biggest knock that a lot of people have on him is like this junior year wasn't as gangbusters as people expected, but still super exciting prospect in terms of physical traits. John, you're up next. Who you got, brother?
Yeah, I kind of just gave my pick away a little bit, but I am going to go Brooks here from Texas.
Okay, I like it.
Now, obviously, his season was cut short with an ACL injury, but this isn't like a death sentence to running backs nowadays, especially how young they are. We've seen them time and time again. The younger they are, they bounce back. Like Breece Hall, looks like he didn't even hurt himself. So I like Brooks. He's got pass catching ability. There's just the only problem with Brooks right now is there's a huge wide range of outcomes. We really don't know what his draft capital is going to be because of that ACL, where he could possibly land in this draft. So, I mean, and there is a chance that he doesn't play in 2024. This is more of an insurance pick. Like, this is talent beats all. Like, if you got Death and you can hold on to him for like a year or two, and he'll find his way to an NFL roster and somehow find production, I think Brooks can do it, but you might have to wait a year or two to see it.
Yeah, he's smooth though, dude. He is very smooth on the field. I bet Marvin probably could agree that without that injury, he might have been his RB1, right? If he goes on and has that great junior year and finishes off at Texas, because he was having a great year. Okay, well, I will keep going. I'm gonna like kind of flag plant it here. Again, still assuming Bo Nix doesn't go in the first round, because I think if he does, that just changes things fundamentally here. I've always loved Jatavian Sanders, and I think like he is kind of falling in this draft a little bit early on here. Now, this is probably all going to change. I think this guy's going to run really fast at the combine. I think he's going to be a first or a second round pick, and I think that'll bump him back up to like right around this range, and this won't be at all a reach. But yeah, he's clearly my tight end 2 of the class. I think the one knock is like he only had 2 touchdowns last year, would be the one thing that like when you do his stats, that doesn't blow you away. I think Laporta only had 2 touchdowns his senior year at Iowa, and he led the league in touchdowns for tight end. So I do believe that tight end or touchdowns are a little bit of like they depend on the offense you're in. There's still a bit of luck involved. And I look at so many other metrics and just his athletic profile and his ability to be a fluid catcher and have yard after catch threat like he is. Like, I really get excited about Jatavian Sanders. So, yeah, that's my guy. Marvin, you're back on the board, brother.
Yeah, it's interesting in this range because you could go in so many different directions, but I lean with another running back here, and I'll go with Blake Corum. He's my RB3 in this class right now, and agree that Sanders is Sanders is a great pick. I think Brooks should be the RB2 in this class right now, and love his upside as well. But Corum, I think, has gone a little bit under the radar, just because his production and efficiency declined a little bit here in the senior year. Now he scored a boatload of touchdowns, which tells you a lot about him too, which is awesome. But something to keep in mind here too: before his meniscus injury last year, he was actually averaging near 1.97 or nearly 2 scrimmage yards per team play. And so for that metric, for context there, if you hit 2, which someone like Jonathan Brooks did, that's the elite range. If you can get up there, you've seen Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, all those elite running backs hit that number at least multiple times in their careers. Now, you can't say that for Blake Corum because he got injured. Now his numbers are a little down because he left the game early, and same can be said about Brooks, right? He only did it once, but he played behind Bijan, so that makes sense. But Blake Corum has, in my opinion, a pretty high floor in that he's a short running back, but with a large frame, very shifty, and even though his production declined, he still profiles as a really solid second-round pick. I've seen mocks have him as the first running back taken. So landing spot will probably amplify his ADP a little bit if he lands in a nice spot, but to me here in the middle rounds, at least where we can get him now, he's a solid pick in my opinion.
Okay, I love it. Yeah, I think he's someone everybody has seen score a touchdown at least once. So yeah, it'll be excited to see. I'm excited to see what kind of draft capital he gets and where the landing spot is. Because to your point, that'll be very interesting. John, you're back on the clock, brother.
So I've been kind of going back and forth in my head to who to go here. It definitely gets a little hairy in the middle of the second, but I think I'm gonna go with a Texas boy. I'm gonna go with Mitchell here. Um, Brooks off the board, Sanders off the board. Let's just keep the Texas theme going here, and let's get Mitchell. Now he's a vertical threat. I almost sound like a broken record saying all these guys have size, but for his size, he's got the speed. I wish he had a little more frame to him. He's 6'4". I think he's just under 200 pounds, so I wish he had a little more weight to him. But he's definitely a vertical threat, and I think in the right offense, he can definitely make a splash.
Yeah, no, I like it. But now I'm like sitting here in my head, like, damn, who am I gonna pick? Yeah, Mitchell. He's one of those guys, like I kind of teased when I watched him on film. I'm like, damn, this guy is smooth. I love some of the catch and run stuff he did. But then you look at his advanced metrics and you're like, wait, this guy doesn't get yak per reception at all. This guy doesn't get yards per route run at all compared to some of the other guys. So it's one of those challenges I'm having where, like, his film, I like what I see in terms of the fluidity, but then the production doesn't really. There's so many red flags there. So we'll just see what happens with his draft capital. But he's a guy I'm like back and forth on, and it's kind of hard for me because, again, the two things I go off of are like production and eye test, and I'm like, okay, he looks good, but his production is kind of a red flag. So, okay, back up for me. This is a tough pick too. I really liked Trey Benson going into this year. He was someone I was watching very carefully. That being said, they seem to like use a two running back system. And that kind of was like weird to me because I'm like, well, when you've got a guy like Trey Benson, who's this other guy? And he was talented. I can't. He's got a funny last name. The other Florida State running back, and he wasn't declaring, so I didn't pay that much attention. But I say that all because, like, I think I'm gonna lean away from him and lean towards a running back who's caught my eye more recently, and that's Bucky Irving. He's probably in my top 3 running backs in this class. I just love his receiving ability. I love how elusive he is. I wish he had more like home run speed. But I think if he falls in the right offense, he could be a PPR monster. But he'll probably always play a change of pace role. So you kind of think about that. You know, do you go for a 3-down guy like Benson or a guy like Bucky Irving who might play less snaps? But I'm going to go with Irving just because I really like the talent and the production. So, Marvin, back to you, brother.
Yeah, I think here I'm still kind of going off of what you said, waiting for some of the quarterbacks because we really don't know where they're going to go. Are they going to be drafted with day 2 capital? Are they going to slip further? We don't know. And this is where I think I'd be willing to take one, but at this point I'd probably take Trey Benson, another running back that I like quite a bit. When you look at his efficiency metrics, he's near the top across the board. When you look at yards after contact, missed tackles forced, an elusive guy at 220 pounds holds a lot of intrigue and upside, in my opinion. The biggest issue for me, at least, is when you look at his production profile. And to your point, they split touches, right? There with and essentially had a committee, but he never dominated at any point in his 4 years. One of the lowest experience adjusted production that we have in this of the top running backs, at least. And so it makes you wonder a little bit, right? Was that because of coaching? Was it because of talent? Maybe both. But you do see a lot of upside when you watch him play. And so if he's going to get second round draft capital, which some of these guys we've talked about, right? You know, we're not sure if some of these guys will go in the second round or even third, or they might slip, right? I mean, as much as I love Braylon Allen, I've seen him mocked later in some of these drafts. And so Trey Benson feels like he's likely going to go in the second, maybe in the third at the very least. So I'll take him here with some of that upside that we've seen in his film and in some of his efficiency metrics. But with that production still being a red flag, I'm fine taking him here.
Yeah, I mean, if he had the production, he'd probably be like a no doubt first rounder, right? And that's kind of why I said I was watching him so carefully. This guy looks smooth. I'd love to see him put it all together in this last year before he declares. And I just think it's funny that people are always like, oh, he's got the 3-down skill set. It's like, well, then why didn't they deploy him like a 3-down back and even in college? But I would love, again, this guy with the right capital and the right landing spot where like he's not facing a ton of competition, wheels up, right? So we'll just have to see. But definitely a very good player. John, you're back on the clock, brother.
Okay, to finish off the second round, I'm going to take Western Kentucky. I'm going to take Corley here.
You dirty dog. You
Listen,
me and you know.
I've heard the talks, the Debo talks, the comparisons. I understand why they're there. The guy's built like a tree trunk. He runs like a running back. I think, obviously, taking someone in the late second, you're hoping for some upside. I think Corley has that. I think he has to fall into the right system to unlock that upside. He has a limited route tree. Those are my really concerns. He worked a lot of his routes at the line of scrimmage, so he's got to improve his game a little bit. But obviously, when you're drafting players a little late, and this you're looking for people that can improve their game. So
yeah, this was we did a My Guys episode, Marvin, recently. He was my first pick. I'm all over this guy. I don't know if in real, I don't want to see him slip this far and slip through my fingers. I'll be honest. I'd rather be I'd rather miss out. Or I'd rather be wrong and take him too early is my point. So we'll just see what kind of draft capital he gets. I know Steve Smith loves him, which I love. So I'm at the 301. I've just been sniped. I'm just going to take a quarterback for the sake of draft integrity here. I love that we're fading these guys. I think it's awesome. I do think it's necessary. So again, I'm not very high on Bo Nix, but again, he's probably going to be drafted in the first 2 to 3 rounds in an NFL draft, and I think at that point you start to look at if he's going to the right team and has a path to start in Superflex, you've got to take a guy like this. And to be honest, I like some of these names coming up, but I'm okay with acknowledging that a quarterback would probably be the next pick here if these guys go in the first couple of rounds.
To piggyback off what you're saying, Johnny, here is most likely when it's time to do your rookie draft, Bo Nix is probably going to be closer to the middle of the second because he's going to have that draft capital. There's chances are he falls to the third or slim to none. So I understand the mindset of taking him here.
Marvin, you're up, brother.
Yeah, and I think it's my turn, my pick.
Yeah.
I know, yeah, it's hard to keep up here, but yeah, I'm gonna go with the quarterback as well here, just for the sake of draft integrity. But I do think to John's point, some of these guys will just go a little higher, so that's why I'm taking Penix. I'm not in love with his total profile just because his efficiency is slightly concerning, lower completion percentage, touchdown interception ratio is not the greatest, and under pressure there's some concerns there, but. Mock drafts have him around that, round 2, round 3, and if you're in a super flex league and he becomes the backup to a quarterback that doesn't have that long-term contract, I think he should be drafted here around the late second, at the very latest. As much as I like some of these other wide receivers and running backs on the board, I'll take him for now and save those other picks for later.
Yeah, I might have actually taken Penix over Bo Nix. Personally, that's just me. I think they really schemed Bo Nix to look really good, and Penix made some really big boy throws. I mean, he is built out of glass. He worries the hell out of me, but the guy's a baller. Okay, John, you're up.
I'm gonna take probably a round early. I'm gonna go with Xavier Legette here. Legette is legit. He reminds me of almost a DK Metcalf. That's my comp for him. 6'3", he takes long strides, yards after the catch. He really dominated cornerbacks. He almost bullied them on the film that I saw. So South Carolina, I mean, I really saw him take over games, and it was something like I really, really like this guy. I just don't think he's going to have the draft capital, and I have no problem taking this guy in the middle of the third, even though he's probably a later round pick.
I don't know, man. I don't think you're reaching on this one, but I also think he is only 6'1" and he's not 6'3".
He's 6'3". Click his name.
No, dude, they just measured this guy at the Senior Bowl.
So they're lying to me?
Dude, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Don't let fake height fool you. Marvin, that's one of his key metrics. And we actually looked it up, and it's like, if you look up the top 20 dynasty wide receivers, 17 out of 20 are taller than 6 feet.
Yeah, especially this class is huge.
I mean, is that advanced analytics if you've ever heard it, or what?
I love it.
So 6 feet, that's the litmus test for John. Xavier Legette, taller than 6 feet. He's going to be a stud. Marshawn Lloyd is going to be my next up here. You watch this guy's film, he will miss some holes, which is like scary. I mean, there were some holes that like were wide open that this guy just ignored. Like he was trying to drop them like a bad habit. But this guy's got juice. He's got some burst. He's got contact balance. Explosive player. I think he averaged like something like 15 yards a catch, limited receptions. But I mean, when the guy caught the ball, he was making people miss. He showed his receiving chops at the Senior Bowl. I've seen people say this is like their RB1 of this class. I don't know if I'd go that high, but he's a pretty solid football player. And again, depending on the right landing spot, I'd be happy to take him here. And back to you, Marvin.
All right. So I'm trying to go through my draft board here. There's a guy that I would have been fine taking in the late second, but there were a couple of the running backs, quarterbacks there that felt more appropriate. But Devontae Walker, it's very top there. He's the guy that I'll take in the middle of the third round all day. To me, he has an intriguing production profile, and I know he didn't play in his first year. You look at his production playing at Kent State. I mean, it's not, it's Kent State, but at the same time, in his redshirt sophomore year, 36% of the team's receiving yards, 65% of their receiving touchdowns, which I had to triple check that because that seemed absurd, but really was the guy there, the wide receiver one in his third season, and the 2.63 receiving yards per team pass attempt is right in line with where you want to see that as a junior or in your third season. And so he's someone who has an intriguing production profile, likely will get day 2 capital from all the mocks that I've seen. His final year at UNC was not as great, but still very respectable, playing there with Drake May. And so to me, there's a lot of upside there. Middle of the third round, I'm willing to take a stab at a guy who likely will get day 2 capital with solid production.
So the reason I was avoiding him, honestly, was just like the Senior Bowl. Like a lot of the stuff I saw there gave me pause with his ability to like win contested catches. Did you bump him down after that too?
Yeah, and then that's why you see some of that in obviously in the film, but then also there's a reason why his production was not as elite as you'd want it to be, right? And so that's why he is here in that middle of the third round. But I'm willing to take a shot on him and hope that it was just a bad week for him. But when he flashed at times throughout his career, I think that still holds value, and we shouldn't forget all of that, right? I understand that there's Senior Bowl, you see some of these clips, but at the same time, his career as a whole is the biggest sample size we have, and so that's where I'm going off of, and my model pushes him up because of that a little bit, but at the same time, he's not as high as some of these other wide receivers we've taken before, and that's why he's still here in the third round.
Yeah. Okay. All right, John, you're back on the clock, brother.
Let's take Will Shipley. Now, guy from Clemson, dual back. He's got elite PPR upside. I'm scared that potentially he will be used as a situational third down back, but again, this guy caught 80 plus balls this year, so I'm chasing some upside in the PPR. I play in all PPR leagues, so if I get Shipley, I am gladly taking him in the middle of the third.
Okay. I will take Audric Estime with this pick. I do like Jalen Polk. I like a couple of the guys on the board here. I think it's crazy we're all fading Lad McConkey. We should all literally get like golden crowns after this because this is woke as hell. The fact that we're all, like Lad has made it to holy crap. Lad is still on the late third. This is absolutely insane. And guess what? I'm still not ready to pick him. I'm going Audric here all day. I think this guy is very intriguing, right? Huge size, had some shiftiness, great yards after contact, early declare, good production. And if he gets in the right role, like this guy could have the Blake Corum role, right? Like to bust this guy out at the goal line, and that equals points. So I think there was a lot of intrigue there. And back to you, Marvin.
Yeah, I love that pick. He's one of my favorite third round running backs to target, and he's usually always here in the middle of the third round. And so in my leagues, if he's there, I'll gladly take him. What will be interesting to see is how high of a draft capital he gets. Could he make his way into the third round? That'd be awesome, and he'd probably get taken earlier, but hopefully we can continue to draft him at a value. Until then, the guy that I'll take here is, funny enough, is the guy that you just mentioned, McConkey.
Oh, I was going to take him next.
Yeah. I think you can only fade him for so long. What was that?
Right. Yeah, it's just crazy how far he fell, to your point. Yeah.
And here's the thing. I'm not the highest on him, and I understand the intrigue because of his route running and some of the comps he's getting out there, and like Cooper Kupp and all that stuff. But we talked a little bit earlier about some of these wide receivers, right? And Cooper Kupp's a great example, right? So why, even though he's an older prospect coming out, why did he succeed? And one of the reasons why is because he just dominated from freshman year to his final year. When you look at Lad McConkey, he did not really do that. And that's where the red flags are for me. So here's a quick stat. So non-early declare wide receivers drafted with day 2 capital who averaged less than 1.5 receiving yards per team pass attempt. Since 2013, they only have a 7% breakout rate in the NFL. So that tells you, even with day 2 capital, that if you don't produce at that high level, those guys don't tend to hit. And second and third round wide receivers, even though it's day 2, the hit rates are surprisingly lower than I think most people will want to realize. And so when you're trying to draft a second round wide receiver here, obviously go after the guys that produced, early declare, and all that. With that being said, I said all that, and I just picked McConkey. He's still going to be probably a second round wide receiver. That still holds value. I'm still willing to take him, especially this low in the draft. But with that, knowing that there's a little bit of risk with him because we don't see a lot of wide receivers with his profile break out in the NFL.
I mean, that's the only reason we're selecting him here, right? Is day 2 value?
Yeah, pretty much. And I'm still not convinced that's the greatest reason to take someone. Because if you don't, trust him, if you don't like the film, if you don't like the analytical profile, then just keep fading him. But at the same time, when you're here in the late third, there's minimal risk, right? And there's still that upside that he could hit.
I love it, dude. That's fantastic. I could give you a whole laundry list on reasons I'm low on Lad, but then I would just sound like a hater. But the comp I heard that I can't unsee is Kyle Phillips. I mean, Kyle Phillips is a smooth route runner. There's nothing wrong with him. He's a good football player. Doesn't mean he's, a Super Cup. Okay, John, you're up, brother.
So similar reason that Marvin give with McConkey. I'm going to give you kind of a bit Polk. I think he's a day 2 pick. I think he's definitely been overlooked as far as this rookie mock draft here. Contested catch guy. I think he's got good size. He played with Washington with what's his name, Michael Penix. So listen, we're at the 3-9 day 2 pick. That's more than enough reason to take someone as a wide receiver here. This class is really deep. So
I'll go next. I've got this guy as I'm just pulling this up, double checking to make sure. This is my wide receiver 8. I actually have him above Corley, Coleman, Xavier Legette, and a bunch of the guys on the board still, and that's Roman Wilson. For me at the Senior Bowl, I really liked what I saw from him. I think he is a really explosive player. He's, I think a lot of the hype McConkey's getting for his route running, Roman Wilson brings that to the table. He's a pretty solid pass blocker, was forced to do a lot of dirty work in that offense. And if I can convey one piece of wisdom to people, and maybe Marvin, you have some thoughts here, it's like I call it the Sam Laporta effect. I kept looking at this guy's production and it was low, and it was like, oh, he only had 50 catches for 500 yards. And then you look at Iowa and they threw for 1,000 yards, and he was like, this is half of their offense. This guy's actually really good, and it's kind of proven by his dominator rating, right? Or his percentage of receiving yard market share. And so I say that because Roman Wilson did not play in an offense or a scheme that is going to make you jump out at his production and his raw numbers. But I think the guy's a talented player, and we'll probably get some decent draft capital, and this would be a really good spot to get him in a real draft. So, Marvin, I know I kind of called you out there. Any thoughts on that? What I talked about of being in a really bad offense and maybe giving them a bit of a bump in terms of okay, their production looks like crap, but relative to how bad the offense they played in, they actually didn't do that bad.
Yeah, I like that call because I think that's the most fair way to evaluate some of these guys, right? Because if you're in a high-powered offense, of course you're going to average over 100 receiving yards per game, right? If you're their wide receiver 1, but when you're on an offense like you said, like Iowa, you're not going to get there, right? And so that's why market share numbers matter. One of my favorite receiver metrics is receiving yards per team pass attempt. That's receiving yards over how many pass attempts they threw. So if you're efficient in a low-powered offense, right, or a low-pass offense, you're still going to stand out there. And so that's my go-to every time, is just to make sure you look at some of those market share numbers or production relative to offense, because it'll tell a lot about a player, even though their total numbers didn't pop.
Love it. Okay, let's we're at the round 4. Let's try and wrap here in the next 5 minutes. Let's do a speed round, just a quick kind of 2 cents on your player, and then we'll keep going. So, Marvin, you are up at the 401, brother.
Yeah, I'm going Jacob Cowing here. What? Yeah, are you guys fans too, or are you more? What was that?
The production is there for sure, right?
100%. Yeah, and that's. Yeah, you can read me like a book. That's exactly why I like him there. One quick stat, because I know we're going quick here. His junior year was borderline elite, or it was elite. 3.7 receiving yards per team pass attempt. Cowing, MHJ, and Neighbors are the only wide receivers in this class to exceed 3 receiving yards per team pass attempt as true junior. It's pretty unheard of what he did. Now he stayed for another 2 years, transferred to Arizona. Didn't produce as well there with higher competition, and so that's likely why he's going to be available here. That's why he'll slip. But what he did relative to his age and his the career year was pretty impressive. And so if you can get him here, he's someone, we talked about day 3 guys that have high production. He checks that box, so gladly we'll take him here.
This year's Tank Dell, bro.
100%.
In my opinion, we're very similar. Okay. You're on the clock, John.
I'm going to take Florida, Ricky Parcell here. Listen.
Love Pearsall.
Yeah, I mean, it's late. He's got good coordination. He makes good like acrobatic catches. I'm sure we've seen the highlight of that catch he had last year. But I'm gonna just take a stab at somebody and hope it clicks right here. And I'm gonna take the Florida man.
Yeah, dude, that
My
catch is
only
ridiculous.
knock is his athleticism. He's got limitations, but good coordination catching the ball. So
Dude, I'm sure Marvin would have a field day with this guy. He's like old enough to have like grandkids too. He's like 24, 25. He was catching passes with Brandon Ayuk at ASU from Jaden Daniels. Okay, I'm going to go. I need to do more homework on Burton, I'll admit, and McMillan. Like Polk and Odunze kind of always were grabbing my eyes when I was watching Washington film. And then like Burton, I've seen some splash plays, but I haven't seen enough of the weeds. Guy I really like is Brendan Rice. He seemed like he was having trouble lining up at the Senior Bowl. Like he couldn't get, even for drills, he was having trouble figuring out the formations. But the dude is physical. He's fast. And his tape looks great. Someone comped him to like Mike Evans, just his play style. He's a little less lanky, but he's a big man. You know what I mean? He plays that bully ball. So that's my guy there. Marvin, you're back up, brother.
Yeah, man, it gets tough here in the late fourth or the mid fourth, but I'll go with Jermaine Burton. You mentioned him already. He seems like someone who will be in that day two range, borderline, and so his ADP will probably rise as once we get that draft capital. But he is an older wide receiver, later breakout. But at this point in the draft, I'm just going for guys that we've seen some upside from, right? And so we've seen in his senior year some of that high level production hit those thresholds that you look for from a production standpoint. Has the speed, ability to separate downfield is really intriguing. And so to me, this late, I'll take a shot on a guy that could get draft capital.
Okay. Dawn, is it back to you?
yeah,
Or no, it's me. Or no, yeah, it's back
yeah,
to
it's
you,
me.
Dawn. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm going to take Ray Davis from Kentucky. This is the guy that had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. My only knock really is I think at the NFL level he might be only considered a rotational player. But again, this is a position that gets hurt all the time. Possibly he gets a shot at starting for a few games. If he catches, if you catch lightning in a bottle, who knows what happens? We've seen it before. So, I mean, he's got low center of gravity. I like his running style, but again, there are obviously pros and cons this late in the draft.
It's kind of like Frank Gore-esque, right? I don't hate that pick at all. So dude, this feels like stealing candy from a baby right now. Let's keep scrolling and scrolling. And the point is, you'll never find this guy.
You might as well type it in.
I think he is actually like my RB1. I forgot about him, and we're only doing a mock, so it's not the end of the world. The kid Jalen Wright. This guy is like lightning in a bottle. I think his draft capital is seriously going to surprise some people. There's some analytical flags there. I know he actually, dude, Marvin's Model 8 this guy for lunch and spit it out whole. So I mean, there's some there's some red flags there, and that's why I love some of Marvin's content, is because it's like, all right, I need to check myself. Just because this guy shows home run ability doesn't mean I need to, push all the chips in for him. But there's no way he falls this far in a real draft, post NFL draft. I just don't see it happening. This is one of those scenarios where sleeper just kind of buried someone on accident. Tank Dell was like this last year. You couldn't find this guy in the drafts until he got third draft capital, and even then it took a few weeks. Okay, Marvin, you're back up, brother.
All right, so I'll take another wide receiver here. So I'll take Johnny Wilson. not the biggest fan of his overall profile. Right now, I was going to take a look at where he ranks for me. He is right now in that 60th percentile range, which isn't, terrible, not great. We'll see if he gets the draft capital, but his production, he never really hit that elite numbers that we look for, but he's been consistently involved and showed production even early on, right? It was just never the top tier production that we want to see out of a wide receiver. And so, there's buzz that he could play tight end. I'd be curious about that because it might be an intriguing transition, but for now, at least here, if he still is around that day 2 range, and so if he gets that, obviously he'll move up. But I'm fine taking a shot here in the late 4th.
My boy Steve Smith said he cannot chew bubble gum and walk at the same time or something. That was pretty funny. I like Wilson. It's just there's just so much talent. That's so crazy. Think about all the guys that are about to go undrafted who are so solid. Okay, John, you're back up, brother. Last pick. Make it a big one.
Yeah, I'll make it a little fun as well because it's probably not somebody I would personally draft, but I'm going to go with Spencer Rattler, South Carolina. Listen, we just saw Brock Purdy, the last pick in the draft, go to the Super Bowl. And listen, I think Rattler shows some upside. I think he's a very creative player. Obviously, there are definitely some things he needs to work on, especially at the NFL level. It'd be interesting how that translates. But I like his upside ability, and if he can bring it into a solid system that he can maybe sit for a year or two, and maybe we can see something special. But it's definitely a work in progress.
Okay, I like it. This is another guy who I am higher on than a lot of other people. Again, trying to find him here. Might have to type it in. Dylan Johnson, running back, Washington. This guy, I felt bad for him because he was looking so good all season and then gets to the college playoffs, got his ankle rolled up on so bad, and just really wasn't able to prove what he could do to the world. I was blown away by his level of toughness because he kept trying to come back into the game, and it shows how much they wanted him to give the ball because they kept giving him the ball after he was clearly so hurt. So, they knew they had something with this guy. My favorite stat about him is as a sophomore, I think it was at Southern Miss, he got 65 passes in a season. This guy has receiving chops. He scored 16 touchdowns on the ground last year. So he is a 3-down threat, I think. When people figure that out, and if the draft capital's there, I think this guy could soar upwards. I really like him. And I had to pass one of my other guys, who again is buried in here, Cody Schrader. Absolutely love him. Led the SEC in rushing yards and is most likely about to go undrafted unless you make him Mr. Irrelevant here with the final pick, Marvin. But I say that because, man, that was a tough one. There's so many good players that are about to be left on waivers. So, Marvin, take us home with the last pick, man.
Yeah, there are a handful of guys here that I'd be happy to take, and Schrader is really intriguing too, like you said. I'll take Javon Baker, who is probably a day 3 wide receiver. Could still move up though. But I like his profile. In early production was not really there. When he transferred though to UCF, we started to see some of that upside. His senior year, the thresholds that he hit were in that that elite threshold where, for me, when you look at receiving yards market share, anywhere getting above 30% is pretty good. Receiving yards per team pass attempt, anything above 3 is really good, and he hit both of those. And to me, he's one of my favorite day 3 dart throws, right? At this point in the draft, you're just going after guys that you probably like more than consensus. But and he's one of those guys for me. And so I'm willing to take him a little earlier here too. But to your guys' point, you go through this draft board, there are a bunch of guys that have some upside, they're intriguing, and so unfortunately there are guys that will go undrafted. But I guess it just shows the depth of this class.
Yeah, man, a great draft. Give us maybe one guy who, if you had one more pick, who you would have spent it on.
Oh man, putting me on the spot here. Let's see.
We only took two tight ends.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of tight ends I'd be fine taking, but to me, there's such a big gap between tight end 2 and tight end 3.
Right.
That I'm honestly fine with the way our draft board went.
I think it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, a guy that I like, I think you mentioned Cody Schrader, so he's someone I'm looking at here. I think Frank Gore Jr. has a little bit of upside as well. When you look at, again, production, he showed quite a bit of production throughout his career there. Never quite hit the elite thresholds we're looking for, but got really close and was never, uninvolved in that offense. And so that's where, at this point, I'm looking for guys that produced. He checks that box. Again, day 3 running backs, not going to hit a lot of those, right? But you aim for guys that at least showed some upside, and he's someone that I like, especially this late.
Yeah, I love that. I'll do a quick. I think Jordan Travis, if he doesn't break his tibia or whatever that gruesome injury was, he's someone I was like really keeping an eye on throughout the season. Dude, there's so many running backs that are going to hit waivers. I thought Jason McClellan was better than people give him credit for. Rasheen Ali tore his bicep in Senior Bowl, but he's interesting. Cody Schrader is a dog, dude. He's going to earn his way on an NFL roster. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a starting running back. And yeah, I mean, a whole bunch of good wide receivers. There's a Luke McCaffrey buried in here somewhere that's kind of intriguing, right? Some NFL bloodline. And then Dallin Holker. That's my tight end 3. Colorado State guy. He was on the Mackey Award watch all season. They fell apart at the end of the year. But if you look at some of the guy's tape, he's really impressive. So, again, Kate Stover's Ohio State talent. There's so much. I mean, this is such an awesome draft, and I think that's why we were so excited to get together for this mock. And thank you so much for joining us, Marvin. You imparted a lot of wisdom for our viewers, and I think they're all going to benefit a lot from it, man. And so you're welcome on the show anytime. We'd love to have you back. And thank you guys for watching tonight. Please leave any comments. Please, if this video goes viral for people tearing us apart for fading McConkey to the 3rd, like that would make my year, guys. So tear us apart. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like. Ask us questions in the comments. We're happy to give you guys some of our perspectives. So thanks for watching, everyone, and have a good off season.
Adios.